Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Rother. I'm the channel for the group here at espavo.org. Welcome to The Backstory. This is the podcast where Steve tells you a little bit of what the group's been showing me, kind of behind the scenes and sometimes in front of the scenes. So anyway, welcome today. I'm glad you're with us. You know, the group's been talking an awful lot in past episodes and actually for several years now. I believe they actually began talking about this in 2015. They were talking about that basically war was moving online and that we were going to start being hacked all the time, that different things of that nature. Even back then in 2015, security was so-so. I mean, it was great. People encouraged you to have good passwords, things of that nature, but you weren't really required to do anything. Today, everything is different. Totally different. Absolutely amazing. A friend of mine lost her phone. When you lose your phone, you lose connection to everything. Now, you have this whole thing called two-party verification. Well, that's a really good way to verify that somebody is who they say they are, unless you lose your phone. This gentleman was not only locked out of his phone and his messages and everything else, but he was also locked out of his email because the email wants to send a two-party verification to the phone. Now, we can go in and change a few things maybe and do that, but you have to be logged in order to do that. Absolutely fascinating what's taken place here every day now. New things regarding two-party verification. Two-party verification is an interim step. There is work being done, and there's some new technologies that will be laid out in the hopefully not too distant future that will allow us to have a lot more security. And when Web 3.0 comes along, if they're able to nurture that along, and Web 3.0 is simply, it was created by the gentleman who actually created the World Wide Web. The whole IP system being able to communicate the way we do was because he basically created it. Not the internet. The internet is different, but the World Wide Web and how that works. He basically wants to create something with blockchain, and it's called Web 3.0. It will give you total control over who has your information and who you give it to. Other people will not be able to sell your information. They won't be able to get it unless you actually give it to them. And there'll be trackers on it. There's all sorts of things that'll be changing. In the meantime, we are floating in a sea of information. Let me rephrase that. We are floating in a sea of misinformation, because that's really what's taking place on a very large scale. Russia is very much interested in our elections going on in the United States. They are doing everything they can on social media. They're not, you'd think that, they're in there hacking into these systems, they're going to change this. There's easier ways to do it than that, and Russia's found out how to do it. They send people over here, they set them up in a house, they start going online, and they basically are here in the United States, where we can't track the IPs from Russia, where we can't see exactly where it's coming from, and they basically get onto the internet and make friends and slightly move things in certain directions. It's really fascinating what's happened. If you don't think that's possible, there's a couple of Netflix documentaries that you may want to watch. There's a couple of new ones that are out. I'll give you some more information about that as you go down. But basically, the most recent one, it was the first one was about social media, and it was actually called Social Media. I can't remember the exact name of it. There's a new one out that now is the next level of that was actually done by the creators of 3chan. In the very beginning, all these rebellious people, the people that we call anonymous, the people that created those and created anonymous, and even created the crazy thing that we call the QAnon. The person who created that is on that. He's absolutely amazed at what took place because he didn't plan any of the things that took place in the way it is. But it's really interesting how we take things like this and run with it. And that is absolutely true. Also, if you aren't aware of what happened back in 2016 with Cambridge Analytica, you might want to look that up. That was quite some time ago, And on top of that, we are now looking at huge advances in technology, which has now taken hold. The reality is they know how to influence us if we allow it. The technologies move so incredibly fast. There's more coming. We'll do a whole backstory on technology because there's a lot to talk about there. They've been talking to the light masters a lot about the technological changes, not just AI, but quantum computing's right behind it. There's a lot of things that are basically going to change our world overnight. We'll do a whole segment on that coming up, but I don't want to get into it today. But today they really want to tell us about the fact that war has moved online. There's two issues we're going to talk about today. That's one of them. And the other is one that they've also been talking about for quite some time. That is the money versus the people. It's an interesting concept. They've been talking about that since the 2016 elections. They were talking about the money versus the people and how that works. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward today too. But let's talk about this hacking situation. We're now working with two-party verification everywhere. Everybody wants you to use one of their little random generators that have their own things on it, the authenticators, all the different things of that nature. Well, interesting thing about computers, they cannot create something random. It is not possible for a computer to create something random. They create something called pseudo-random. And basically, it's a pattern that the chip has no variations. The chip has to follow a pattern. So when it follows these patterns to create these crazy passwords that you see that your password manager gives you and everything else, sometimes that's actually done by an algorithm, not random. And I say that because just recently, one of the main keepers of passwords called RoboForm. And if you have RoboForm Password Manager, I will tell you that it was recently hacked into, and in the way that they hacked into it, they found the system that they were using to generate their random passwords. And as such, they could anticipate what passwords were going to be handed out and what range they were going to be in, what they were going to look like. It's really interesting that just happened just recently. So you can look up the RoboForm hack to find out more about that. Now there's another one, and we've been talking about this for quite some time. I want to bring it back up. We've been talking for a long time about how the internet has changed. Now some of you may go to your computer in the morning, you may pull up your stuff, and you may find out that things are slow, or things aren't working quite the same that you want. Or maybe you have to call a company, and the company says, oh, our computers are down right now. Well, that was something that used to happen back in the 2000s, but now in the 2024s, the 2020s, that doesn't happen very often unless you're hacked. A lot of people are being hacked. There's people that are being held ransom. They don't particularly want you to know that. Many times the employees are not told that. They're told that there's a problem on that, and they don't actually have to tell you that unless certain things happen that qualify for making that public information. And I tell you this for a simple reason. We told you the internet was under attack. We told you China was very deep into many of the routers in the United States. Well, it goes even further back than that. Now, I don't know whether China was ultimately responsible for this, but in October of 2023, not that many months ago, we had a cyber attack that is just now becoming public. And you can look this up. 600,000 routers were destroyed in the United States by this virus that went around. 600,000 routers. This includes Class 1 routers. It includes Class 3 routers. It includes all these different routers that basically make up the internet system. When you get on your internet, it goes to your local internet service provider, and then they route it through all these different routers. It's done automatically, but it's basically routed through all these different routers to get to the other side of the country or to get to another country or someplace of that nature. 600,000 routers were destroyed, not damaged, destroyed. in October of 2023. Most of this is just coming to light. Just want to tell you about it. War has moved online. That's really what we're telling you. And Russia is huge at it. Now, not so much that they would do this type of thing. This is probably more typical of China, South Korea, or North Korea, rather, different places of that nature. Iran would love to be doing things like this. China wanted to get into our system so that they could be there to slow things down, to confuse us, to make things very confusing, especially around the times of the elections. These elections are important globally, and everybody's watching what's happening in the United States. A huge stream of misinformation, talking points, is being fed in all the time and channeled through certain specific channels. Certain television stations are carrying these. Not all of them, thank God, but there are certain ones that do. And then, of course, are repeated by everyone who's on one side or the other. These things are repeated over and over and over again, and many people actually believe what they're being told from this. And these are talking points that are aimed at this. On top of this, they have over 10,000 points of data on each one of us here in the United States. They not only know my birthday, they know my favorite color. They know the types of things I buy. They know the different aspects of it. 10,000 different aspects about each person in the United States. Now, some of this was gathered originally. Google gathered it. Originally, they flat out told you they wanted to bring you ads that you're interested in. They don't want to bring you a bunch of ads that you're not interested in. They want to target ads that you're interested in, so they've been collecting this data. Well, this data is being used by a bunch of things, and if you're not familiar with what happened with Cambridge Analytica, you may want to go back and look at that. That is the social network that is on Netflix. The name of it is The Social Network. Now, there's another one. I can't remember what it's specifically called, but I think it's called the Other Social Network. So it's basically the one that I just talked about with the creators of 2chan and 4chan and Anonymous and all these other things that took place. Absolutely fascinating to watch how this stuff takes on a life of its own and gets people who are on the border of being angry. Well, that's a lot of people today, and we're seeing this happen over and again. So anyway, you've got 600,000 routers that were taken out of commission quietly. Nobody told him. Most of this, by the way, happened in the Midwest and southern part of the United States. Now, you might think that 600,000, half a billion routers is 600,000, routers in the United States is a big deal. It was a huge deal. But we're also very resilient. There's all kinds of backup plans in place. So most people may not have noticed this. But this is validation for the things the group has been talking about. And I want to bring it to your attention. Because when the group shows me these things and they pop up in my newspaper, they pop up on the television when I'm watching news or something, the group says, pay attention. This is something we talked about. And that's what I'm trying to bring you. These points that they're talking about in different ways. So you've got a lot of things that are taking place on this basis, and a lot of things that are moving very quickly. So you've got a lot of people that are very interested in these elections coming up. They're very much trying to make it go one way over the other way. I'll let you figure all that stuff out because I really don't want to get into politics here any more than I already have. But there's a lot of influence coming in and a lot of misinformation. We now live in the age of misinformation. It's that simple. So anyway, as we prepare for this, we want to make you all aware of that and kind of share with you. All right, let me look at my notes so I don't forget anything here. Okay. Oh, one other piece that's being collected that I want to make people aware of that you may not be, and it's not, I don't know if it's every company or not, but I recently changed insurance companies for my automobile. And I got a notice from them saying, you're going to lose this. You're about to lose your discount because you didn't put this phone app on your phone. Well, it's a driving app, which basically drives. It basically tells anybody who's hooked into that how I'm driving. If I'm driving too fast, it knows it. If I'm speeding in an area, it knows it. It knows a lot of different things about it. If I stop too fast, if anything's of that nature, and they can actually judge your driving by this. Now, these got very popular, and almost all insurance companies have this. They advertise it as one of their benefits. You're not paying for everybody, you're just paying for you type of thing. But they're also selling your data on where you are. In order to do that, you have to allow that data, you have to allow that phone to share your data location. There's a lot of local merchants that would like to know where you are and will pay a lot of money for that. And that is starting to become one of the data points that people are collecting. Local data on where you are. We had a few things a while back where it was 5 different companies were sued because they were selling that data on where you were. I believe it was T-Mobile, Verizon, some of the big internet companies, some of the big cell phone companies were actually selling your data of where you were, what your location was at any point. Fascinating. We talk about 10,000 things they know about you. Now they know where you are. And this is one of the apps that collects that data for you. Now, like I said, maybe your insurance company is a good guy. Maybe they're just using it in the right way and they're not selling the data. But it's certainly worth asking them. And don't you think? Are you selling this data? And they have to respond with a yes or no. Real simple. But be aware, this is the new hottest point. Localized data that they sell to different people in different areas. So that's one of the things that I wanted to mention. Also, we've had one of the largest hacks ever with AT&T here in the United States. AT&T used to be American Telephone and Telegraph. That's how far back it goes. It used to be the telephone provider, the only one. There was never any competition. It had a complete monopoly until the Justice Department broke it up and made it go in all these different directions. Really good. We don't do that as much anymore. We don't break up monopolies, or Facebook would not be around in the way that it is. But anyway, we've got a lot of these things that are taking place. AT&T was hacked, and recently hacked. They got 73 million people. There's only 330 million people in the United States. They got 1/4 of it in one hack. All this information, current customers, past customers, if you were in there at some point, you got hacked. Now, they didn't think it was a big deal. They tried to just kind of calm it down and show it. But that information is just now showing up on the dark web. So it's been for sale. Now it's not only been sold, but it's being used. So be fully aware of what you're doing here and keep an eye on things like your bank accounts. Keep an eye on things like several of your other accounts that have simple passwords. The days of using the same password for everything, they're over, folks, if you haven't figured it out. I'm a big opponent, of passwords. I hate passwords. That's one of my passwords. I hate passwords. Now I told you my password. So anyway, you try to figure out passwords that you'll remember. That just simply makes it easier for the algorithms to find it. If somebody's actually trying to hack into your account, they can in a fairly short time. So just understand you're not completely protected, but the more that you have a good password manager or a password thing that you can work with, it's really helpful. Most of the password managers are online, which means that your information is being kept on the cloud somewhere. Well, that's what AT&T did, didn't they? They broke into their cloud. So and the cloud, by the way, is just someone else's computer. That's all it is. But basically, that's the idea. There are password managers that are on your computer. There's not a lot of them anymore because they really tried to get rid of them. You can make a lot more money if you have to charge a person every year for their password manager rather than just have them buy a piece of software that goes onto their own computer. So they've moved most of these online. But the reality is, if you're able to find a password manager that's offline, use it. Find it wherever you can, that the passwords are kept on your computer. Much, much, much safer. So anyway, just a couple of words about that. AT&T, that was a huge pack. 73 million people were hacked in that attack. I don't know exactly when that took place. I think it took place a couple months ago. They did let us know that it took place. They were required to. And yet at the same time, we didn't see it happening. Now that information is showing up on the dark web. I will tell you that. 73 million people. Keep an eye on what's going on. A lot of energy is going into the internet, into security. There's a lot of people trying to make money through security by scaring you, by trying to tell you different things. That's one of the easiest ways people get hacked, or people get conned, basically, is by somebody calling them, telling them they have a security issue and we need to go in and fix it for you. By the way, what's that 6-digit password your bank just sent you? Don't ever give those things away. Ever. Nobody in any company will ever ask you for those. And yet that's one of the most common ways of dealing with it, is to get people in fear about their security and that they're going to somehow solve it. So that's one of the things to watch for here. We lose a lot of money every year for people being hacked, people being conned, very simple things of that nature. That it happens to smart people. It happens to everybody. So anyway, that's one of the things that they wanted to talk about. Okay, finally. One last piece on this. The sun. Have you noticed the sun is still going crazy? Well, let me bring you up to date on that, what the group has been talking about. The sun is this ball in space, right? The sun is turning, right? Not a lot, but it turns. And the Earth, of course, is spinning out here too. So we have these coronal mass ejections. We talked about them last time. This is where the sun goes through solar maximus every 12 years. And when it gets into its solar maximus, which it is right now, it spews things out. Basically, you have these solar storms that look like they're just little twists going on, and then it explodes into space. Well, we have a lot of fear about that. People talking about your internet going down, hard drives being erased, communications disrupted, all that kind of stuff. All those are true, but most of them are simply talking points for news. They want to, they'll sell more news if they scare you. So they try to make it more dramatic than that. That has not happened. And yet we have new types of solar flares that are happening. When a solar flare typically happens, it spews out into the universe. Most of the time, it is not pointed directly at Earth. That has started to change. Well, it's not so much that it's always pointed directly at Earth, but what's happened is they've started to actually have solar flares that go out in a whole circle of things. They don't go straight out. They kind of wrap around. And in wrapping around, eventually the Earth gets hit with that energy. Now, when you start seeing X-class solar flares pointed directly at Earth, yes, we've got some problems we may experience. And it may be with the internet. It may be with our communication systems. But we haven't really experienced that yet. Recently, just a couple days ago, there was one M.95. M simply means a medium-class solar flare. 9.5 is the classification. I think it goes up to 30, so that's kind of elusive. But the X-class solar flares are the big ones. The M-class solar flares, because they're dragging this long tail and all the energy does hit planet Earth at some point, you're seeing the aurora borealis, you're seeing the northern lights in different places you've never seen them before. You've seen them in Florida. We've seen them near the equator, different places. You only normally see these in the northernmost hemispheres. Alaska was one of the favorite places in the United States to watch the aurora borealis. Now it's in many places, and this is going to continue for a while. The sun is going through major eruptions. And like I said, because of this new type of energy it's putting out, Earth is getting hit more often. We're getting hit with hard protons that change a lot of the energy of the Earth, and we feel it in different ways. The protons, the hard proton one recently that was ejected as a coronal mass ejection, took out tons of cameras in space. Yes, we've got cameras all over the place in space. You've got spy cameras, you've got traffic cameras, you've got all sorts of cameras. It took out a huge number of them. They came back afterwards, but it basically blanketed with a whole energy of disruption, kind of like static energy. So that did happen just recently. You'll hear more about that. What you'll really hear about is the people that go outside and watch the aurora borealis. They watch the northern lights light up the sky. That is actually the energy from the sun, the magnetic energy hitting, and the photons hitting our magnetosphere, which is the magnetic field around Earth. When it comes in and hits that, it lights up. It's real simple. It interacts with the magnetic field of planet Earth and lights up. And because we have so much of that going on now, it happens in different places. The good news about this is that this is positive energy for the Earth. And I'll be talking a lot more about that. We're going to be doing a special event on Future Earth, and come see that if you want to find out much more about what's taking place. There is some good news coming, we hope. There are some predictions the group is going to make about some potentials for changing the way we deal with Earth coming up next year. Not this year, but next year. You may remember the group talked about several different things that have happened pretty much in an order. First of all, we had the timeline cross with a planet called Eris. That timeline cross opened up all kinds of connections, and the Earth got a lot of energy from Eris, from the planet that it crossed with. So the Earth was a huge benefactor from that timeline cross. It also brought more positive feminine energy. So the feminine energy should be rising at this point as well. We're really anchoring that in right now. So the feminine energy is here in a different way, which is really kind of cool. So we're anchoring that in right now. We're also seeing a lot of the masculine energy fight to hang on to anything it can control and try to over control. That's pretty typical. But anyway, that's taking place right now. But the other part that happened was the group specifically said that Earth and Eris would help each other. The planets themselves would help each other. I'd have to say at this point, Eris has helped Earth more than Earth has helped Eris. And yet, the timeline crosses created something very special for planet Earth. Not the humans, but for planet Earth. The humans are going to benefit from the rise of feminine energy if they stop fighting it. Okay, so anyway, that's what's going on there. Now, on top of that, recently we talked about stargates opening. There were 4 new stargates that just opened on planet Earth. Stargate is what has been postulated as a wormhole. Einstein actually talked about wormholes, spaces where you could connect something very quick. One of the easiest ways we can demonstrate the whole wormhole idea is to take a piece of paper and fold it over on each other. And simply say, if you measure all the way across the paper, it's 9.5, 12 inches, something like that. But if you fold it over on each other, you take a shortcut and you can go right through that. That is a stargate or a wormhole. Stargates are open in both directions. You can go through the stargate or people can come to the stargate. We have had a lot of visitors through those 4 open portals in the recent months. And it's only been open for a little bit more than a month now, maybe 2 months. We've had a lot of visitors come through there. Those beings are working with the planet. They are not here for us. They're not here to direct us. They're not here to help us. They're here to work with the Earth. Keep in mind, the Earth is, according to the rest of the universe, the Earth is a living, sentient being. She has an identity, she has a personality, she has needs, she has a whole bunch of things that the rest of the universe sees in ways that we don't. Many times they are more concerned about the health of the planet than they are about the health of the people. So in some ways, humans are somewhat parasites on planet Earth. So it's very important to get this help first for the planet. And that's what they've been doing. Now, there are possibilities coming. We'll talk about this when we do the Future Earth event and bring that up and talk about different ways that this is working. But you can be a part of all of this. And of course, what we do next is going to be huge. We've made some huge advances. We've switched over to a lot of electricity, renewable resources, things that were right in front of us. And they are starting, I will put that off for a year. They will start to show a difference next year. That's what they're basically saying. And we'll talk a lot more about this and talk about the future of humans, some of the other aspects of this. But the first aspect is the planet itself. How is she doing? How is she incorporating this? The solar flares that we are getting are actually charging the planet in a positive way. So when you see these come in, and when you hear on the news, oh, it's going to disrupt communications, your internet's not going to work. Well, if your internet's not going to work, it's probably because we're hacked, not because of this. But anyway, there will be people making a lot of noise about that. But keep in mind, this is a good thing. These solar flares are hitting the Earth. They are having an effect. Now, for the rest of this season, this solar season, it's going to be very powerful for planet Earth. We're going to see more M-class and X-class solar flares, hopefully, as we go through. We need a lot. We absolutely need a lot. You know, if you look at the solar cycles, you can see that the last 4 solar cycles have decreased. They've all decreased in the number of solar flares that have sent out, the number of eruptions from the sun. Now, you might think that that would almost indicate that the sun is dying or the sun is leaving in some way. It's actually a fairly normal cycle that the sun goes through, so it's not to be in fear with, but we are really happy to see that reversing in this solar cycle. That's something that the group predicted in particular. So what about this year? What about this summer? Is this going to be the hottest summer on the planet? Yes, it will. It's already showing all the signs of being it. You already have more tornadoes than you've ever had in a season. You're about to have more rain than you had in a season. Well, I live here in the desert in Las Vegas. We got rain this last year. We don't get rain. Stuff falling from the sky here is very unusual. So it's very unusual. And yet we got a pretty fair amount of rain this last season. So things are changing a little bit. And yet this year is still going to be the hottest year on record. We're going to set another one. We're changing a lot of things. There's a whole bunch of markers that have led this way that have allowed us to see different things in different ways. But we're going to have a nasty one. You're going to see a lot of hurricanes on the east coast of the United States. You're going to see a lot of rainfall in different places where it's simply these superstorms come and dump these huge amounts of water in different places. That has a lot to do with the balance of planet Earth as she spins. So because the spin is starting to wobble a little bit, we're starting to see these different things take place. All of this can be taken on a normal basis as long as we can start slowing it down. You're not going to see it reverse the first year, but if you see it slowing down, that is the trigger. That's what we're looking for. And unfortunately, we're not looking for it this year. We're looking for it next year. So that's kind of what the group's been telling me about a lot of these aspects that are going on here on planet Earth right now. And we'll try to keep you as much up to date with these as we can so that you can kind of figure out the backstory of what's going on. There's a lot of information taking place. Well, I did want to mention very quickly what the group talked about for many years. They talked about the fact that and they said this quite a few years ago, that we've lost our democracy here in the United States. They said it for an unusual reason. They didn't say it in the fact that we have taken away the Constitution or anything of that nature. But what they said is it's now the money that determines pretty much everything. Now, whether you take that to be businesses, whether you take that to be the super wealthy people, we'll tell you a lot of the challenges that we experience here on planet Earth have to do with the wealth gap. The fact that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's the fascinating part about what's taking place with all this misinformation coming in from Russia. The people that are supporting it are people that are also going to be hurt the most by it. It's an absolutely fascinating time on planet Earth. And it's very difficult because people are so emotional. They get wrapped up in their belief systems, in their bodysuit, rather than rationalizing things out, rather than really looking at things. Most people are going to vote emotionally. That's not the smartest thing to do. But that's where we are. So if we all hold hands, we can make a difference no matter how this goes, no matter what takes place from this point forward. The idea is that we can all start connecting ourselves as human beings working toward the same thing. When we were on the other side of the veil, we all wanted the same thing. We all have the same motivation. We disagree about how to get there. But that doesn't mean one person's right and one person's wrong, or one person is evil and another person is good. This stuff has gotten completely out of hand. So anything you can do in your life to be tolerant, to open up to other ideas, to open up to other possibilities, to try and understand how your friends who are maybe on the other side of a fence for you, how they understand how they got there. Why do they feel that way? What's that about? What can you tell me about that? And get people talking. That's when we can connect heart to heart. And you're not out to convince anybody. That's not the idea. You're out to gain this information for yourself so you can see how humanity changes and evolves. I hope you enjoy that. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us today. It's been a joyous day, and we'll continue to bring you these connections as often as possible. Know that you are loved, and this is the backstory here at Espavo.